Lots of people talk about chasing their dreams, but how many actually do it? Welcome to the Pursue Your Passion podcast with Tyler Kamerman. We're going to introduce you to people who are intentionally pursuing their passion every day. Through their stories of success and their struggles, you'll gain insight into how to better begin or continue your journey. Now here's Tyler with today's guest.
What's up, passion pursuers? Welcome back to the show. This is Tyler Kamerman with you. As always, I am excited that you're along on this journey. Whether this is the first episode you're joining us on, or if you've been with us since the beginning, I'm excited to have you here. Today, it's just me, and I update you on what's going on with me, do a recap of the last few shows, and make another exciting announcement at the end of our time together today. So let's just jump right into it. I want to update you on what's going on with my passion journey. As you're aware, if you listen to this show, my life took a pretty big turn just a couple months ago. My responsibilities, my day job took a big shift. So I moved out of the financial services world and into the nonprofit world with an amazing organization called Many Hands. Many hands. I got to watch my Midwestern accent. It's lots of hands, not little hands. So Many Hands. And my role is Chief Development Officer. Now, where that's shifted some things is I've realized that I've found a new pathway passion. And I already talked about how we got to this point, so I don't want to belabor that point, but I am just super excited about the opportunity to be working with an amazing group of people, with an amazing organization that has an incredible mission, both down in Haiti, and that's going to be expanding, but also here locally in central Iowa through our thrift stores. And my role is Chief Development Officer. So my job is to go out and really tell the story and in the hopes of gaining new partners in a lot of different areas. The main focus being new donors, so financial support, also new volunteers. That's a huge one for us. And then just partnering through the different programs that we offer and the events that we put on around central Iowa, and then obviously the programming down in Haiti as well. So that's been a big shift. It's interesting. When I was contemplating making this shift, I reached out to my coach. And he said, a lot of times when someone's getting ready to make a big step or make a change, and he's talking about people that he's coached, he said something like this will come along, and not exactly like this, but an opportunity will come along, and a lot of the times it's a distraction. It's a bigger paycheck or a flashy new job or something like that really is going to detract them from this permanent passion, this main passion that they have identified. And so, Mitch had said, hey, a lot of times something like this is a distraction. It's not what you're supposed to do. But he said, man, after looking at this just feels like an amazing fit. And that was exactly where I was at too. It was something that I knew I could put myself into, I could put my full passion into to, help the organization, but also help me grow. And the neat thing about it, knowing that public speaking is an avenue that I want to get more into, I've already had 2 opportunities to get in front of a group of people and share the story of Many Hands. So I know that this is a great move. I'm confident that it's the right one, but it was great to hear Mitch say that as well. Like, hey, this just feels like it aligns with everything that you're trying to do. Now, having said all that, I am much busier than I was previously. I mean, there is no downtime during the workday, which is exciting. And for my personality, that's a great thing. But I really have to get focused again on being intentional about my time and being much more deliberate about setting my week, setting my day, and a practice that I had begun working on that I've slacked off on a little bit is time blocking. And I know we've talked about that on one of our episodes before, but I wanted to hit on that again because I think it's super important, especially the busier that we get. I had a manager early on in my career that blocked his whole day, not just his work day. And he said, he said, I remember my girlfriend thinking it was really weird that I blocked time for her, but he literally had his day blocked from the time he got up until the time he went to bed. I don't know if that amount of time blocking is necessary, but I know that time blocking during the workday and potentially even, before my workday starts, when I was doing it, was extremely helpful. So I know that that's one thing that I need to really get more regimented about, make that a bigger part of my schedule again, because I'm having trouble finding the time to do all the things that I need to do and all the things that I want to do. So just another plug in there for time blocking. Again, especially, I mean, it doesn't matter where you're at on your journey, but especially for those folks that are, might be working one job and doing something on the side. But even just if your main focus is your workday, there's lots of books that have been written about having a really strong focus and saying, okay, from 9 to 10 I'm working on this, and then I'm going to jump into something else because I know the way that my brain works, I can't focus on one thing for more than 45 minutes or an hour and a half, wherever you're whichever way you're built. So definitely wanted to hit on that. The other thing that I wanted to share is I think if you're going to get on social media, if you're going to share on your podcast that you had this, fairly transformational, it might be a strong word in my case, but a big weight gain or, a big weight loss, a big physical transformation. And so, at the beginning of the year, I shared that over the course of 2021, I was able to lose roughly about 30 pounds. And, that was a combination of things. The biggest thing was making a morning workout non-negotiable. Get up every morning and do some type of workout. Some mornings it was just a walk. Usually it was a run or yoga or, some type of weightlifting routine. But another big thing was my diet. And for me, full transparency, I've been blessed with a pretty strong metabolism, even still, at 44 years old. But the biggest shift for me was getting rid of nighttime snacks. Definitely eating healthier at the meals at mealtime, but just stopping after dinner. That was the biggest thing. So I say all that to say, if I'm going to, share the wins, then I feel like I need to share the step back or the two steps back as well. So I got off my workout routine. It's really easy to do, and it's not that I got off it completely, but I got away from 5 days a week or 6 days a week of doing it, and also have kind of let the sweets creep back into my diet. And to be frank, the results are showing back up. I'm back up 10 or 12 pounds. So I haven't gone back up to where I was, but I have taken some steps back, and I don't share that because some people are like, yeah, whatever, 10 pounds, but it's more about for me, the process. If I'm going to share these wins, then I want to share with you where I've taken some steps back too, not because I want to encourage you or say, hey, it's okay, I did it too. But I think sometimes it's good to know that if you're listening to somebody, if you're following somebody on social media, we tend to just show the good stuff on social media, right? Like, oh, hey, here's this awesome, dinner that we're out at, or here's the vacation that we took, or here's how awesome my kids are. And, the problem with that is then if you're not processing that properly, it's like, oh, well, so-and-so's kids are always getting A's, or they're always the top of the pack. And you don't see the part where they're, the kids lying to them, or, stealing their credit card to put money on their video games or whatever, right? We just show the good stuff on social media. So I just wanted to take a moment to say, hey, I had this win and I've taken a step back. Now I'm on my, I've made the adjustment or started to make the adjustment, and, getting back into the daily routine of a workout. Maybe still haven't given up the occasional snack after dinner. So that's the next step. I think camping season is a rough one for me because we love to camp, and it's sure a lot easier when you're sitting around a campfire to, enjoy a s'more with the kids. that makes it harder for me than just sitting around the house. But anyway, I wanted to share that with you, and know that sometimes, we do take two steps forward and one step back, right? And I'm not gonna say, hey, that's okay. It is okay, but like I just want you to hear that, you know we do sometimes take some steps back in the middle of making progress. So over the course of the last 2 months, I've had four great guests: Dave Price, Zach Kowalik, Justin Bennett, and Eric Recker. And I think the unique thing about these guys is that they all have differing journeys. There's some crossover in how they got there, in the things that they did, in the mindset. And I think that's the through line of this show, is talking to people who are intentionally pursuing their passion, who are going after what they're doing. But the cool thing is the paths of how they got there are different. But again, they're different, but they're the same. But what they're doing, and especially like I look at these last four conversations that I've been able to have, and what they're doing differs a lot. What I love about doing these, drill down, solo casts, whatever you want to call them, is taking the opportunity to go, okay, where are the similarities? As I look at the conversations that I just had, what are the things that stand out to me? And so, as I approach looking at speaking and talking more about pursuing your passion, there's some key things that I start looking for, especially in these conversations. It's not actually the questions that I ask the guests. It's kind of as I'm going back through and seeing what they have to say, like, okay, where are and you hear me say this, where are the golden nuggets, right? But there are some bullet points, I guess, that I will a lot of times put things into categories. And that's, how did you find your passion? Just do it. And I know, obviously Nike's got a trademark on that, but like typically we get to a point where we're talking about when they had to, well, that would be more sticking with it. Like when they had to really dig in and keep going, just do it. A lot of times what falls under that category is just getting out and going after what you're passionate about. Sometimes we get stuck in analysis paralysis, right? Like we're making all these plans, or we're trying to check all these boxes before we actually take that first step. And in almost every situation, every person that I've talked to, it's kind of about just going. Some people a little more blindly than others, but it is just about taking that step. And then, there's also the conversation about how do I monetize, or when do I monetize? And that leads into, when do I quit my job? Following by, what do I do next? And what do I do next is a wide variety of things. And that doesn't mean, if you're asking the questions, what do I do next? It doesn't mean you've made it. Just might mean, what does this journey look like going forward? But, with these guys in particular, there was some really great stuff about how do you find your passion? And I'm guessing if you're listening to the show, you're either on your journey already, you've highlighted that passion, or you just know that there's more to you. There's something else you're supposed to be doing. So hopefully, some of these ideas will be helpful. But I think if you don't know what your passion is, there's internal work that needs to be done, and that looks different for everybody, right? So that's not when I share, when the guests share thoughts, when I share a recap, take what you like and leave the rest. This may not all apply to you, but typically that if you're in that spot where you don't know exactly what it is that you're passionate about, that's going to take some internal work, and that internal work does look different for everybody. But I love one thing that was mentioned, over the course of these shows: wherever you're at in your journey, whoever you are, you have to be true to who you are. And that's not just a passion thing. Like I love, and it was Dave Price that said that. And it kind of followed that he loves, being a student of people. And that's so true. And that's something that it took me. I've shared this with several people, and I don't know if I've shared it on the show, but one reason, and I have a great family. I love my brother and sister very much. I love my mom very much. But one thing that really impressed me about my sister is she figured that out at a younger age than most do. If I'm honest, like you have to be true to who you are. I was different. I was a different person for different people. I was a bit of a chameleon. Whatever crowd I was in, I knew who I needed to be, and I'd lived a lot of my life that way, a lot longer than I would like to admit. And really, it's been within the last decade, if not the last, 3 to 5 years, that I've really noticed that. Like, hey, I have to stop. I have to be true to who I am always in every situation. And my sister Jana just figured that out, already in high school. And I'm sure, she might hear that and go, no, that's not entirely true. But like, I just remember an instance in high school where some things changed, and she and another friend, made a decision that they made a decision to not do some things that another crowd of people were doing. And I just remember even in my early 20s going, wow, that took a lot of courage, and also like a lot of confidence and courage to know that at like 15 or 16 years old, who you are and who you want to be. Like I said, I didn't figure that out till my late 30s or early 40s. So anyway, squirrel there. But wherever you are on your journey, whoever you are, you have to be true to who you are. Another thing that was shared that I thought was really good is, don't focus on defining your passion as something that has to be your career. And I'm an example of that one. I defined my passion as, going after, really intentionally going after this entertainment, the on camera work, the voiceover work. That's really where I took the first step, knowing full well that in Des Moines, Iowa, the chances of me doing that as my full-time work were extremely small. But I knew that passion had been placed in me. The neat thing about that is, through conversations, through intentionally pursuing that, I've come to realize that, that's entertain. At the core of it, it's, I love to entertain, right? So you can, and Adam Carroll helped me figure out, entertaining can be public speaking. Entertaining can be a podcast, right? So there's these different things, and then the layers start coming on, and then it's like, oh, wow, no, not only that, but I'm really passionate about helping other people find their passion. So, I can go down a whole rabbit hole there, which, tends to be the theme today, apparently. But I think that's super critical, to not always focus on defining your passion as something that has to be your career. I mean, if you love it and it starts really kicking butt, then maybe it becomes your career. But don't always think that, hey, I'm going to chase this passion, and in X amount of days or X amount of months, this has to become my career. Because I think you're going to put yourself in a box that you don't need to. As far as, finding that passion, three of the guests, said almost the same thing. And that's, whatever brings you the biggest amount of joy, like focus on that. Forget money for now. What brings you the greatest amount of joy, and sit in that, and think about, okay, I love doing this. Maybe it's fishing, maybe it's woodworking, whatever that is, maybe it's reading books, but sit and think about that. And I know I said this already, but forget money for now. Just think about what brings you joy, and start figuring out how you can do more of that. Also, as you're thinking, what are some small experiments that you can do to bring more of that joy into your life? How can you free up time? What are some small experiments that you can do to get you more of what you're passionate about? And I think if you take the time to do that, those paths are going to start opening up for you. Flip that on its head a little bit, but in the same vein, what's a big problem that you want to solve? Or where have you had hurt or pain? A lot of successful ventures have come from people trying to fix a pain point or heal a wound. And you hear fix a pain point or heal a wound. Heal a wound's pretty specific. I mean, that's something that has happened to you, or a bad thing that you've experienced. But a pain point, that doesn't necessarily have to be personal either. I think back to a previous episode and one of the guests was, talking about one of his hobbies, and Jeremy Boyson was talking about, how the car thing was a hobby. He was still working his day job in IT, and he had to order some aftermarket parts for his car, and it was a mess. And he's like, "How can I fix this?" Similar, Zach, and I mean, two car guys, a few episodes apart, but Zach and in his shop, they knew what they wanted to do. They're trying to tell other places, hey, here's the parts that we need. Here's how to make them. And no one could ever do it as well as they could. So they started manufacturing, right? So, just examples of, what's a pain point? Where are you? And my biggest recommendation there is don't immediately go, oh, it's already been done. I'm not going to be able to do this. If there's a pain point in your life that you feel like you could get passionate about, that might be your jumping point. Another thing that was brought up that I think falls under that, how do you find your passion? And this could be, how do you define it as well? But find 5 people that you know and trust and ask them, where do you see me light up? What do you see as the things that get me going? Where do you see me thrive? And I think if you take the time to do that, you're going to get some really cool answers. And I would go, my recommendation, if you're married, your spouse should definitely be one of those 5. But, outside of that, try to push outside of your comfort zone a little bit. You best friend is a great idea because they know you really well. But then, maybe it's stepping out a little bit further too, outside of a friend circle, to get some unique perspective on that. Because sometimes other people are going to see something in you that you don't see. So I think that's a really great exercise to go through if you're trying to find that passion, or if you're starting to run stuck with the one that you're chasing. A resounding theme when I ask that question, though, also is don't push it. If you're working to try to find your passion, there's got to be some organic level to that as well. Like, it's really hard to just force that piece. So, don't be afraid to sit and take time with that. Don't push it. Don't push it too much. Zach, and I haven't been kind of calling out all these points by name, but Zach said something that I think borders on profound. And underneath kind of the just do it, or the sticking with it, a bullet point, if you will. If you have something in you that is very unique, and that's what you feel called or drawn to, the way you do it doesn't matter. What matters is that you do it and you approach it with the seriousness and sincerity that you were meant to. And that just really, I love that whole thought, but the way you do it doesn't matter. And I kind of alluded to that a few minutes ago. It's it's interesting to me to see the paths that the people that I get to talk to are on, and how sometimes in the middle of their story, I even think, gosh, I wouldn't have done it that way. But that's the beauty of it, right? Like, we're all individuals. We all have our own journey. We're all going after different things. But I think the cool thing is we share our stories with each other. We see different ways to do things, and that helps us on our journey. But we can also share that with other people. Like, hey, this guy's really successful and he did it this way, but I did it this way and got this result, right? So I love that he said that. If you feel called or drawn to, the how you do it isn't so important as much as you do it. If something has been placed on your heart, you have to go after that. You have to go after that. And I hope that this show is one of the things that's inspiring you to keep putting one foot back in front of the other. Another neat thing that got brought up, kind of in in that, hey, the sticking with it. Hey, maybe you're at a tough spot. Persistence is becoming popular again. And I say that tongue in cheek, but I think it's the truth. You read about all these, you read books from, whatever, Depression era, the World War II era, and maybe into the 60s, and persistence is always the thing that works. But there is virtue in persistence. Just keep going. Just keep walking until you can't, and it's surprising how far that will take you. So, in those moments that things are getting tough, again, I know it's cliche, but just keep putting one foot in front of another until you can't. And it's in those moments, it's in the difficulties that the more people that I talk to, the big the big breakthroughs were just on the other side of, man, I was about to quit. So when you get to those days that you're about to quit, just keep going. If you're running out of energy, maybe it's a pause, but you got to keep going forward. Because and again, if you haven't been along on the whole journey, almost every single person that I've talked to came to a point where they were about to quit, and then they did one or two more things. And it doesn't mean that there was a windfall of cash on the other side, but there was a breakthrough. There was some wall that broke down that allowed them to get to the next level. But I think it's also important to remember that the value doesn't come from numbers. I mean, it does, right? But you can't just focus on numbers. We get too focused on numbers as far as gauging success. The value comes from the growth and the process. And I know that sounds really, I don't want to say pie in the sky, but yeah, of course, Tyler. Yeah, the growth comes from the value comes from the growth and the process, but it does. Goes back to what we just talked about so many times. That breakthrough is just on the other side of almost being willing to quit. So if you get too focused on the numbers, you could be missing the internal growth. You could be missing the courage, the steadfastness that you are building in yourself by continuing to work hard. If you've been on this journey for a while, maybe you're getting to that point where, like, hey, how do I know when I'm supposed to quit my job? And I love, I've plugged him once already, but Mitch Matthews has a great podcast that he talks about your leap number and figuring out what that number is. How much your side hustle, how much your passion, how much your side gig has to be creating in order for you to feel comfortable making that jump. And I think it's a great process to walk through. Justin said, don't jump too soon. Sometimes immediacy creates success, but many times it creates desperation. And he used the example of kind of going full time with his coaching, probably before he should have. And you can't sound desperate. You need to be confident in whatever venture you're in. If you're out of money, if you're to the point of desperation, you can't sound desperate. You have to sound confident. And so sometimes it means continuing to do your main job while chasing this passion, so that you're not immediately in a spot of desperation and needing a certain amount of income from that. So when do I quit my job? Again, that's going to be different for everybody. We're not coaching one way or the other until we're doing more one-on-one coaching. But yeah, I love you can't sound desperate. You need to be confident in any situation. Just some really great, conversations with these guys, and some other tidbits that I took away. And I kind of hit on this already, but Dave Price said, be a student of the human being, be aware of how the people around you treat others. And that was actually kind of two separate thoughts from him. But I love the idea of being a student of the human being, because that's beneficial no matter what field you're in. The more that you take the time to really try to understand the way that people work, the better you can work with them, but the better that you're going to understand yourself as well. And then be aware of how the people around you treat others. Man, I'd love that. And the example that I'm giving away a secret here, but the way that people treat servers, I pay attention to that. And I think people that have been out to eat for me know that I can be kind of critical, because I spent a fair bit of time in the service industry. So I've walked in those shoes. But what I pay attention to is how people interact with service people. Because if you're a jerk, that tells me a lot about your about your personality. If you can't take the time to be polite to the person that's serving you your food, taking your order, that tells me that there's a good chance that that's, something that, you might be putting on a show in the course of this meeting. Now, on the flip side of that, I love seeing people who engage with service staff. I love to see people who are engaged with the front desk people. That to me just shows that you genuinely care about people. And I know that those are two blanketed statements, but I also love that Dave said that. Be aware of how the people around you treat others. In the conversation with Zach, we were talking about childhood, right? And he said, give your kids freedom to dream and fail, and don't instill a lot of expectations. Actually, he said that that's kind of what his parents did. So I should kind of clarify there. But that was my takeaway is, we have to give our children the room. I think a lot of people are good at giving their kids room to dream, right? But we have to give them the room to fail. And that's a hard one. That's a hard one for me. That's a hard one for a lot of people. But if you allow them to fail when they still live with you, they have the support. They have that support structure right there. They have you in their life to help walk them through that failure. If the first time they really experience failure is when they go off to school or go off to college or go off to work, now, yeah, you're still in their life, but you're not right there under the same roof to walk them through that. So, I thought that was really good. And don't instill a lot of expectations. That one I think is a hard line for me to walk. And I've shared this on a lot. I've shared this or an iteration of this in many episodes, but I really want to encourage my kids. I struggle with the word push because I don't want to be a crazy parent, but I want to push them. I want to push them to their limits in a healthy way, but I don't want to have expectations on them. And I think there's a fine line there when you're trying to encourage, you start to have those expectations. So that was a really good one for me to hear. A couple of the guests hit on this, but Justin in particular said in nearly every situation, coaches help. And it wasn't just a shameless plug for his financial coaching. CEOs have coaches. NFL quarterbacks and Olympic athletes have coaches, right? So the people who are at the top, absolute top of their game have coaches. And a lot of it is accountability. It's someone to hold you accountable. And I think about this, especially in that kind of like business leader CEO role, they see your blind spots, right? You've got such a great grasp. If you've kind of climbed to that executive or CEO level, or if you're running your own business, you don't have to have the title of CEO. If you're in charge of things, you have that vision of where the organization, where your plan is headed, and a coach can help you see those blind spots. So I think that's something to really consider as you're on this journey is, would a coach be helpful for me? And trust me, I I hear the term life coach and I sometimes chuckle because I see people in their 20s as life coaches, and I kind of think to myself, hey, you haven't even lived your life yet. I mean, I'm at 44 and I still feel like I have so much to learn. That's not to say that somebody in their 20s can't be a life coach. If you know how to listen and you can, again, see those blind spots, you can provide value to somebody. So, but I know a lot of people when they hear coaching, it's like, that's just somebody charging you money to, blah, blah, blah. But accountability, if all they're doing is holding you accountable and helping you see your blind spots, it's probably worth what they're going to charge you. And I say they, obviously that's something that will likely be a part of my journey. And I feel like I'm, kind of already starting to do it with some of my friends and just not charging. So, I got to make a mental note there, but definitely if you're chasing a passion, if you're trying to get something off the ground, it might be a good idea to start, looking at that coaching possibility. I love that Eric Recker said one of the biggest things that he added to his life, and what a great interview that was. Eric has just done so many things, really interesting dude, but 30 minutes of quiet each day. He implemented that when COVID hit, and he said that that was a game changer. He also said, because the minute he said it, I had this exact thought. He said, the first time that I did it, it was about 45 seconds in, and I started going, oh man, there's no way I can do this. So, maybe, maybe you don't jump right into 30 minutes of quiet time, but I know for me, I'm probably at close to 45. If I bring in my Bible reading time, so it's not 30 minutes of like meditation or prayer, but I have probably actually closer to an hour of each day where I'm quiet. I am reading. It's not just a focused meditation or a focused prayer, but that has been instrumental in my life as well. In fact, my wife has on numerous occasions said, "Hey, did you take some quiet time today?" When she knows clearly that I didn't, because there's a change in my personality. So anyway, for Eric, it was really gave him more focused journaling time. It was huge in that regard, and a plug for journaling as well. Here, time and time again, people, that's where the next great idea comes from. Another thing that Eric brought up is many times we find activities or ventures to distract us from dealing with the problems that we need to face. Sometimes that's just in our everyday life. Sometimes that's in the passion that we're pursuing. But I really sat and thought about that. I mean, that is such a thing that we do, and a lot of it has to do with the supercomputer that's in our hand or in our pocket or in our purse. The majority of the day, we distract ourselves. We find other activities to distract us from what we really need to be doing. That one hit me hard, and I just wanted to make sure and hit on that again. While I had this time with you, I know this one has come up before as well, but I just love it. There's power in being grateful. That got brought up by several of these last four guests as well. And I love, and I got out of this habit, 5 things that you're grateful for each day. At the end of the day, I would write them down. And, some people would say do it at the beginning of the day because it takes you, it keeps you focused on it. But I would, one challenge I would have is, what's a way you can experiment with gratitude this week? I love writing down the 5 things that you're grateful for each day. Eric brought up that Monday mornings he walks to work, and the only thing he allows himself to talk about is gratefulness. And so there's definitely something with a positive mindset that being grateful goes hand in hand with. And then just to kind of wrap up this other category that I took away from these conversations, first in last in was one that's the way that Eric put it, but it also came up from one of the other guests, is your phone. We are such creatures of habit with these phones now that the first thing we do when we get up is we're on our phone. The last thing we do before we go to bed is on our phone. And again, so a habit that I was really starting to build that I got away from is, I'm not going to get on my phone for the first hour in the morning, and I'm going to put my phone down for the last hour before I go to bed. And I was sleeping better. This is exactly what Eric said too. I was sleeping better. I felt more refreshed in the morning. I felt more focused, and I've stuck pretty well to the morning because I roll right into, when I do it, I roll right into a workout and then into my quiet time. So that kind of puts that buffer of, hey, I'm not going to be on my phone. And if you have to be on your phone for, to set an alarm or to check your list, it's that's different than jumping immediately into news, or different, jumping into social media. So really think about, what you're putting in first thing in the morning and what you're putting in right before you go to bed. Just to kind of recap the book recommendations: 1619 Project by Nicole Hannah Jones, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, Dave, and then some authors without books specifically attached to them: Dave Ramsey, Mike Michalowicz, and Gary Keller, particularly The One Thing. Soundtracks by John Acuff, which I just picked up. In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day by Mark Batterson. Great book. Love Does by Bob Goff. Again, amazing book. And The Power of Positive Leadership with John Gordon. So I just can't say enough. I know I hit on some of the golden nuggets here for the last 25 minutes or so from these episodes, but man, I would really suggest that you go back to episodes 22, 23, 24, 25 and listen to the whole thing. Just some great things that have been shared, some personal things that were shared. I love when people share things from the past, share things that they're working through right now. And I just have to say, this has been so fun. The next episode will officially be a year of the Pursue Your Passion podcast. So I'm excited for you to listen to that one. I'm stoked. Again, if this is the first time you've jumped on board, I hope you'll go back and listen to some of the other guests that we've had, because we have had some awesome people on the show with us. If you've been on board since the beginning, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate the comments that I get. I appreciate the support. I appreciate the occasional constructive criticism as well. So, and that kind of leads me to my next, my closing, I guess. I would love it if on the platform that you're listening to right now, if you would rate this program, if you'd take the time to review it, I would love it. By rating and reviewing a show, it helps promote the show. If you're probably aware of that, but that's kind of my ask for you. If you're getting something out of this, please take the time to at least give it a good rating. If you have the time to write a review, that would be awesome. If you're comfortable sharing this with a friend or a family member, I would love that. Step beyond that, if you want to share this on your social media, whoa, that would be incredible. Also, if you haven't already, check out the website, tylerkamerman.com. It talks more about public speaking and where I'm going in that direction, and would love the opportunity to visit with you or your organization about that. Thanks for being on this journey, and I just want to encourage you, like I said, keep putting one foot in front of another. Keep moving toward that passion that's burning in your heart, and I would love to have you on the show sometime. Take care.
If you have questions or would like to contact us, please check out the show details for contact information. Thanks for listening to the Pursue Your Passion podcast.